Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Carbonica podcast series. Today we're digging into the soil as we explore carbon farming, green transitions, and what it takes to build a cross-border excellence hub from the ground up. Joining us is someone who's been steering this vision with insight and strategy, Grigoris Chatzikostas, partner at reframe.food and coordinator of the Carbonica project. He's here to walk us through the how, the why, and the what's next. Welcome, Grigoris. It's good to have you here.
It's great to be here. Thank you, Maria.
Let's take it from the start. How did the idea of Carbonica come about? What sparked the need for an excellence hub focused on carbon farming?
First of all, I was already introduced around 2021 to the concept of carbon farming by Professor Grigoris, who is from IBEC Institute, who is also the scientific coordinator of this project, and I would say the scientific initiator of the project. What we see is the clear truth that we have three ecosystems, Greece, Cyprus and North Macedonia, that they face similar challenges. They face similar challenges coming from the climate change, coming from the reality. Our region is very vulnerable to climate change, but at the same time they're facing similar challenges in terms of the structure of the innovation ecosystem and of the structure of the farming sector that is a very important sector for the economy, but at the same time needs urgently modernization, needs urgently what we call the twin transition, digital and green transition. Therefore, we put all these activities together. We capitalized upon the fact that carbon farming started gaining traction. At this point, when we submitted the proposal, it was already quite high in the policy agenda, although it was not quite known to the stakeholders yet. And the proposal we put together in the first 3 months of 2022 got accepted, and therefore we're now implementing the Carbonica project.
Carbonica is part of the WIDERA program under Horizon Europe. For listeners unfamiliar with this, what's the link and how does it shape the project's purpose?
Let's start first of all to explain what is the purpose of the WIDERA initiative as a whole. As you know, in Europe we have excellent research, but this excellence is not spread equally or homogeneously among countries. There are countries which we are calling widening countries that are lagging behind in terms of research and innovation indicators. Unfortunately, Greece, Cyprus and North Macedonia are among those countries. So the aim of the project is not only to deliver technical results, but also to build an ecosystem that will allow the research and innovation area, communities of these three countries to step up, to become more on par with their counterparts in Europe, to learn how to collaborate, to learn how to build long-term relationships, but also to try to reverse what we call brain drain, the unfortunate fact that in our countries in the past, scientists and smart people didn't have that many opportunities, so as a result, many of them left their countries and went to work abroad. In Carbonica, we are aiming to achieve what we call brain gain, to bring all those brilliant minds back to their countries, at least to learn from them, but also to empower them to contribute into the green and digital transformation that our farming sector requires.
That would be fantastic. You've been running the hub for over 2 years now. What would you say is the biggest lesson or insight you gained as coordinator of such a complex and cross-border project?
I've been extremely privileged during the past 2 years because I must admit that personally, but I think all of us at reframe.food as a team have learned a lot. One important personal learning takeaway from the process is that coordination is not about control. Coordination is about empowering people to work together. This essentially means understanding people, understanding the different needs, understanding the different agendas, combining them, being able to combine people that are having different perceptions of timing. For example, when you have private companies that are looking for immediate results and at the same time policymakers from the ministries that know that things in their environment take time, they all need to come together. On the top of that, an additional important aspect that we have learned is that it is very important to build the trust and the relationships early on, because this allows to clear out the ground, this allows for people to know what they can expect from each other and sometimes what they cannot expect from each other, and this helps particularly Now that we are in the most demanding phase of the project, the full implementation, the demonstrations on the field, and all other activities, these investments in time and in effort we made the past 2 years paid off because we're experiencing, luckily for me as a coordinator, a very smooth implementation of the project and a very smooth collaboration among the partners.
That's such an important point, coordination as facilitation rather than control. Can you tell us a bit more about the multi-actor platforms? How have they been working in practice?
I will do my best to explain what stands as EU jargon into plain terms. What we call multi-actor platforms, or what the WIDERA initiative calls quadruple helix, in reality involves the people who care about the topic, who care about the subject. And these people are, of course, the farmers themselves, the practitioners, are also the technology providers, the companies who are able to deliver tools and solutions that will allow carbon farming to be implemented. It's certainly the policymakers. We should not forget the starting point, which is always the scientists and the research community, but also it turns out also to the citizens, because carbon farming is a topic that essentially has to do with our environment, but also with the food we eat every day. Therefore, what is described in Brussels jargon as quadruple helix is exactly the multi-actor platform we have built in each of the 3 countries. And we worked a lot on the ground for this. So we really picked up the phones many times. We did lots of research inside and outside. We organized lots of events to find out who is involved and to bring them all together in order to feel, for the first time in our region, as a whole ecosystem.
So you've mentioned policymakers. How has Carbonica engaged with policymakers at EU or national level? Are they responding?
Okay. Before asking a question, are the policymakers responding? One has to ask the other question. Did we do all the necessary steps to engage them? And one aspect that I mentioned earlier, and I think is very important, is the timing. Because policymakers think of timing in a totally different way. Therefore, if you really want to engage them, you have to start early on. In Carbonica, we have been privileged to include policymakers, namely ministries, but also other competent authorities, from the very beginning in our consortium. This means that we had a direct dialogue with them from the very beginning. Nevertheless, in order to engage even our partners, but also the other policymakers at national level or at the EU level, we need time, we need the material to be prepared for their purposes, and we also need to engage them by explaining them how the project can be useful for them. Now, for example, in the case of policymakers related to carbon farming, we have new legislation like the Carbon Renewal Certification Framework or the Soil Monitoring Law, where the majority of policymakers need insight. They need information, they need evidence, and we exactly were positioning ourselves to be the provider of evidence-based insights that will allow them in the future to form relevant CAP measures, but also to influence the remaining of the structural funds, because there are other parts of, for example, the technologies part will not be financed only by CAP, but also by other structural funds, in order to be mature enough and to get the funding that the mission of carbon farming deserves.
Would you say that carbon farming is becoming a viable business opportunity for farmers or agri-startuppers in your regions, or is it still more of a policy concept?
The good news is that we have started moving from the conceptual to the implementation phase. But at this point, I would like to highlight that we need to be extremely careful, and that this is something that we have always been careful to Carbonica. We don't want to overpromise. Our farmers in the past have been hurt by promises that this or the other concept or this or the other solution will be the silver bullet that will solve all their problems. Unfortunately, such a solution does not exist. Therefore, carbon farming might indeed be a viable business model, but there are many assumptions going with that. First of all, we need to make sure to see how the credits will be traded. We need to see if the offsetting or insetting model will be the dominant one. We need to understand how the measurement, reporting, and verification will be implemented, and where are the tools or the solutions that are needed for this purpose. These are all big question marks that our project aims to follow the trends and be able to act as an intermediary that will provide this knowledge, and especially through our business accelerator, to provide this knowledge to potential participants.
That sounds like a pivotal point. Let's talk about the consortium. 14 partners across 3 countries is no small feat. How have you managed collaboration and cohesion?
First of all, I would start by saying that I consider myself as a privileged and lucky coordinator, because I had the luxury to start from a very solid basis of existing collaborations. We started, of course, with the starting point being the excellent science that we have in all 3 ecosystems. And then we build along this, bringing together the rest of the actors, what we called previously the quadruple helix. But important things again is trust, transparency, and cultivating the common purpose. It helps a lot because none of the partners see themselves as being in this project as one of opportunity. The majority of the partners had previous collaborations, but also created other collaborations while existing in this project. This somehow highlights the long-term relationships that exist within the consortium. And we capitalized basically on that. We did a lot to understand the strengths of each partner. We mobilized different partners for different missions, and a consortium runs like any other business or any other team of people who want to achieve the same purpose.
What's been your experience working across 3 different, very different agricultural contexts, Cyprus, Greece, and North Macedonia? Are there more similarities or differences?
Let's start with the similarities and the big ones. Biggest similarity I see, we need to do something in order for our farmers to survive climate change. We need measures for mitigation, we need measures also for adaptation. And we need that in a landscape that is not very favorable. Our countries have been lagging behind in terms of investments in research and innovation, public and private. They're lagging behind comparing to more successful countries in terms of collaboration mentality. And while we have excellent science, it has been fragmented and scattered. Now, when it comes to differences, because they exist also, that's why we do not apply a one-size-fits-all approach. First of all, you see that North Macedonia is still in pre-accession stage. It's not a full member of the European Commission. This, by definition, creates institutional barriers. This, by definition, creates, let's say, incompatibilities when it comes to legal framework. At the same time, we see that Cyprus, for example, is normally the front runner when it comes to compliance with EU legislation, while in Greece, we're sitting somewhere in between. Adoption of legislation is a little bit more complex and a little bit later, but we have a very big and deep agtech ecosystem that has already achieved a lot, and we found lots of interesting parties from the private sector to be engaged.
How do you ensure that the outcomes of Carbonica, like the joint research and innovation strategy or pilot recommendations, don't just sit on a shelf after the project ends?
Well, I think this is the biggest challenge for every European project, and Carbonica is among them. What we always do in Carbonica is that we are making sure that what we are delivering is not just nice white papers or roadmaps. We go a step beyond. We are making sure that we deliver weapons in the hands of those who want to push the agenda of carbon farming forward. In such a way, our research and innovation agenda does not only include theory, it also includes actionable insights for the policymakers. It gives them the right proposals in order to mature interventions related to carbon farming across the different regional and national funding schemes. On the top of that, we are not only delivering papers, we are working together with the farmers and we are providing them tangible tools literally, our toolbox is literally a toolbox. It's a box that includes high-tech, yet affordable and easy-to-use instruments that make the process of measurement, reporting and verification related to carbon farming more efficient for the farmers.
Finally, what's coming next for Carbonica in the second half of the project?
Well, the most exciting things, if you ask me, are still to happen. So, for example, we have the Business Acceleration Program. This is probably my favorite because in this particular aspect, we want to mobilize the most agile link in the value chain. We want to mobilize the startups, the SMEs, the young people with bright ideas on how to build successful businesses related to carbon farming and give them all the knowledge, the tools and the network they need in order to achieve so. And we will continue doing what we started from the very beginning. We found out that collaborating, communicating with the end users, with the farmers on the field is very valuable. Farmers rarely believe in PowerPoint presentations or podcasts. Farmers need to see to believe. And for this reason, we have a long and large campaign of demonstrations in the farms, with the farmers, listening to them, listening to their problems, listening to their challenges, and trying to incorporate those in the results of our project. And we will continue doing so.
That's great. Sounds like strong foundations for impact. And that's a wrap on today's journey through fields of innovation. A huge thank you to Grigoris Chatzikostas for sharing such a grounded perspective on Carbonica's work. It's been a pleasure, Grigoris.
Thank you, Maria.
It's clear that this project is cultivating more than just ideas. It's building ecosystems that can last. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure to follow Carbonica on social media for more updates and insights. See you next time.